Hillary Clinton and Brian Williams have new careers. It's leading the charge against fake news.
And lately there's been a lot of coverage in the real news about the growing and booming business of creating fake news.
The epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that flooded social media over the past year. It's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences.
Hillary Clinton isn't alone wanting to engage in stolen glory and lie about what a brave war hero she is. The only problem is there was footage broadcast live around the world of what happened when she actually landed.
There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base.
Problem is, that's not what happened. And we should know, CBS News accompanied the First Lady and daughter Chelsea on that Bosnia trip. That's Senator Clinton talking to me on the military flight into Tuzla. And these are the pictures we recorded of the greeting ceremony when the plane landed.
And then, of course, there's fake news king Brian Williams smugly leaning back in his chair on David Letterman's show, telling Letterman and the world what a hero he was and how his helicopter was hit by a rocket-propelled grenade and AK-47 fire.
We were in some helicopters. What we didn't know was we were north of the invasion. We were the northernmost Americans in Iraq. We were going to drop some bridge portions across the Euphrates so the 3rd Infantry could cross on them. 2 of our 4 helicopters were hit by ground fire, including the one I was in.
No kidding.
RPG and AK-47.
What altitude were you hit at?
We were only at 100 feet doing 100 forward knots because we had these massive pieces of bridge beneath us on slings.
What happens the minute everybody realizes you've been hit?
We figure out how to land safely, and we did. We landed very quickly and hard, and we put down, and we were stuck. 4 birds in the middle of the desert, and we were north out ahead of the other Americans.
But then it came out that the whole story was a complete manufactured fiction.
I made a mistake in recalling the events of 12 years ago. I want to apologize. I said I was traveling in an aircraft that was hit by RPG fire. I was instead in a following aircraft.
And once the public started investigating and fact-checking Mr. Williams, we discovered that most of what he says is a complete and total manufactured lie or fake news.
And lately there's been a lot of coverage in the real news about the growing and booming business of creating fake news.
And of course it came out in WikiLeaks that the Democratic Party was actually working with all the major news networks to put out fake news stories against their enemies, namely Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, as well as any other populist movement that threatened the power structure's monopoly of power in this country. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The Democratic Party, the Republican establishment, the mainstream media, Hollywood, did everything they could, lying, deceiving, faking polls, giving debate questions to Hillary weeks before the debates. I mean, you name it, every dirty trick in the world, they did it, but still the voters in record numbers rejected their propaganda and brainwashing. And how do they respond? Let's take the worst poster children of being caught lying to the public on every subject you can imagine, Brian Williams, the king of fake news, the king of fraud, the king of making stuff up, and then have him combine in a major PR rollout with Hillary Clinton in a war on, quote, fake news, which means alternative, independent media, not just here in the U.S., but all over the world that doesn't toe the central corporate globalist line. If I tried to chronicle all the weasels that the establishment pays taxpayer money to propagandize the American people, we'd be here all day. NPR gets taxpayer money. NBC gets taxpayer money. MSNBC got stimulus money. CNN, all of them get all these government advertisement packages. They call it propaganda placement. We've got people like Gruber that got millions of dollars from the government to write up lies and go on TV and deceive the public about the fact that Obamacare hired IRS enforcers and doubled and tripled prices. And then, as if it's not enough to get taxpayer money to lie to us, he goes on TV and talks about how stupid we are and thank God we're dumb and don't have attention spans so we don't recognize a giant screw job.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever.
So if I tried to chronicle all of these deceivers, all of these predators, we'd be here for 10 hours or more. So in the interest of time, let's look at one more. And this is a really sad one because this guy has talent. He's very, very funny. And when he was opposing Bush's tyranny, he was able to actually tell the truth because he's a leftist and he was attacking the establishment right. And of course, I'm talking about Stephen Colbert. He has gone from doing what I would say pretty good work to being a monstrous deceiver of the American people. I mean, he always played a fake conservative. He always put out fake news. The very definition of what he now claims he's crusading against. And he does 15-minute news pieces attacking yours truly, WikiLeaks, twisting information, saying things we never said, and then telling us that we need to grow up.
So WikiLeaks, Alex Jones, and these subreddit subgeniuses, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, grow the up.
These guys want to say we're fake news. They want to say we're conspiracy theorists. When they have congressmen on television saying that myself and Donald Trump and even Tucker Carlson are basically Russian agents, it's amazing.
Let me just ask you one final question. Can you look right into the camera and say, I know for a fact the government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of John Podesta's email?
Absolutely. The government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of our institution and the dumping of information.
Of John Podesta's email.
Not only in the United States, but also in Europe.
Okay, you're not, you know what, you're dodging.
And Tucker,
no, look and say, I know they did. John Podesta's emails, they hacked those.
And I think that Ronald Reagan will be rolling over his grave at your carrying water for the Kremlin.
I'm not carrying water for the you're making, look, you're a sitting member of Congress on the Intel Committee, and you can't say they hacked.
You're gonna have to move your show to RT Russian television because
you know what?
This
That's
is perfect.
Just so
this is perfectly
beneath your
placed.
office because it's so dumb and you're being duplicitous. I'm asking you, did they hack Podesta's emails? And you can't say it.
Insults like that, Tucker.
You just said I was carrying. Oh, you said I was carrying water for Putin. That's pretty hilarious.
You know, when you essentially are an apologist for the Kremlin, that's what you're doing.
I'm an one last time, Congressman. Look into the camera and say they hacked John Podesta's emails. We know for a fact that Putin's government did that. You can't, and you know you can't, and you're hiding
Tucker,
behind weasel words.
I just said that the
say they hacked John Podesta's emails.
Russians. I'm not going to be specific as.
Oh, because you don't know it. That's why. All right, done. One.
So as usual, what they're saying is upside down or the inverse. They're claiming that foreign intelligence agencies are running the liberty movement that's been around for 50 years or longer. It's like saying Barry Goldwater's a Russian agent or Ron Paul or myself. Donald Trump just stepped in at the crest of that to really take it to the next level, understanding that there is a tide in the affairs of men when taken at the flood leads on to fortune, to quote Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. And now we have the CIA getting it legalized to operate domestically and now getting the funding to go out and set up the NGOs and actually command the social justice warriors at the colleges, high schools, newspapers, and other levels. I mean, this is so authoritarian, so treasonous, so unconstitutional, but it's the last gasp of authoritarians that thought they would really dominate America and turn it into their workhorse slave to bring in their world government. Well, since I'm quoting a lot of historical points, both fiction and nonfiction, here's one from fiction. The best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. Or to quote my favorite quote of all time by Mark Twain, in the beginning, a patriot's a scarce man, hated, feared, and scorned. But in time, when his cause succeeds, the timid join him, because then it costs nothing to be a patriot. And we're entering the season of the patriot. We've seen the patriots fight against the globalist takeover for 50 plus years. They were the winter warriors. They were the winter patriots. And now, in the season of the summer patriot, do you think you little tyrants have any chance selling your intellectual poison when all we're doing is promoting free will and an open society? Good luck. Now, the good news is the Washington Post recently had to come out and admit, okay, we're wrong about the fake news list. No one can really define that unless it's an open satire site. and we listed a bunch of people who aren't, and it's not really our place to do it. It is kind of a McCarthy blacklist. And by the way, we have no evidence that the Drudge Report, InfoWars, and Breitbart are getting orders from the Russians. Well, that's because when you actually study WikiLeaks, it's Hillary that got $35 million from them, and Hillary that met with Putin in secret. No media outlet, whether independent or establishment's ever shown ties to Trump, myself, or others to Putin. This is a joke. We're as Americana as it gets. In closing, I want to break down some information that's so ominous, that's so over the top, I have trouble personally even believing this is happening. The European Union last Monday came out and said you have 24 hours, U.S.-based sites, Google, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, hundreds were listed, to block what we call fake news. And the EU is using the list that the Washington Post admits is totally fake, and they won't even say where they got it. So again, the folks telling you what's fake won't even tell you where they got their information. Another sign of who is really fake. But I want to close out here with the fact that since that happened on Facebook and on Reddit and on many other big platforms, Infowars.com is now being blocked. Our videos, our articles, you name it. And ladies and gentlemen, whether you love Infowars or hate it, if we are able to be restricted and shut down and governed and cut back now, it will happen to you in the near future. First they came for the trade unionist. I wasn't a trade unionist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the Jews. I wasn't a Jew. I did nothing. We all know the famous refrain from Nazi Germany. Then when they came from me, there was no one left. This is real tyranny we're facing, and I have been pointing this out for 3 years, that the Washington Post, in their Foreign Affairs Journal, admitted that 3 years ago, Congress repealed the Smith-Mundt Act that legalizes the CIA and a cornucopia of other agencies to engage in domestic deception and information warfare against the American people. And now they've got two bills. One has passed the House that will openly allow the CIA to operate against the American people by interfacing and creating new news services. So they've already legalized this happening. Now they want the billions of dollars of funding to do it, and we're going to put that legislation on screen. This is serious authoritarianism. But the good news is this is only being done. They're only taking the gloves off and admitting they want to openly censor us because we are absolutely devastating them. That's why Hillary, 3 months ago, said that I was such a dark heart and a horrible person. Just on Thursday of this week, she came out and said we need government, we need corporations and others to basically go after the, quote, fake news, which she has defined as the alt-right.
The epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that flooded social media over the past year, it's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences. It's a danger that must be addressed, and addressed quickly. Bipartisan legislation is making its way through Congress to boost the government's response to foreign propaganda, and Silicon Valley is starting to grapple with the challenge and threat of fake news. It's imperative that leaders in both the private sector and the public sector step up to protect our democracy and innocent lives.
The legislation establishes a new office or new bureaucracy inside the State Department titled Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act. Legislation designed to help American allies counter foreign government propaganda from Russia, China, and other nations. So they also want to get foreign governments ganging up on the American people. They say it will improve the ability of the United States, that means the big corporations that have hijacked us, to counter foreign propaganda and disinformation by establishing an interagency center housed at the State Department to coordinate and synchronize counter-propaganda efforts throughout the United States government. So we caught the Democrats and Soros and others and foreign banks running our media, coordinating. So it was a big bombshell. Now they're just going to hide the coordination out in plain view like it's America fighting the Ruski agents. Meanwhile, it's the globalists fighting the patriots that are trying to restore America, restore our sovereignty, restore our jobs, our Second Amendment, and more. They're the globalists that are usurping us with TPP, NAFTA, GATT, the American Union, the EU. The EU, run by the very same central banks, it's a global system, has announced it's going to have a standing army now to counter nations pulling out. And they told England, we don't care if you voted for Brexit. We're saying it's illegal, even though you never voted to enter us. And so now they go to the final phase of saying they'll use force with an EU army. Wow. That was leaked 5 years ago, and they wouldn't deny it. Now they openly admit an EU army that's going to march into Greece or Italy, you name it. The good news is no army can stand against an idea of liberty. No army can stand against an idea whose time has come, to quote Victor Hugo, the great French philosopher. And the fact that we forced them out in the open to be so tyrannical is the reason we are beginning to really turn the tide. And I'm going to end with the most important point of everything I've said, of all this epic information, and it's this. No matter what color you are or where you came from, when you promote freedom and a free press, you promote an open, free society. When we lose free speech, war and tyranny and oppression always follows. But don't be intimidated by this. Realize this is happening because they know a great awakening is taking place. They know a new renaissance is here. Another great turning, as it's called by historians. And they're really upset because the MVPs of this fight have been good people inside government agencies, not just here, but also in Europe. And the main WikiLeaks info and DC leaks did come from people inside the federal government that realize this is serious tyranny and that they are defending this country from enemies foreign and domestic and a foreign corporate takeover. And so that's one of the big aces in the hole we have. They always say I'm anti-government. No, I'm anti-unconstitutional government that's out of control, too big, and squashing people's hopes and dreams. And there are a lot of folks in the government that are aware of what's happening because they see it at point blank range and they understand what's happening. So just know this, the government's not our enemy. It's criminal elements that have hijacked it that are moving us into this corporate world government that are ruthless, that are arrogant, that are disconnected from reality, and who think they're invincible. The good news is with Brexit and Italy saying no to EU expansion and Iceland saying no and Russia pulling away from the globalist and with the election of Donald Trump, humanity through nationalism is reasserting itself and the globalists now know the battle is joined. I'm Alex Jones signing off for Infowars.com. We're under attack, and more than ever, we need your support. We need you to understand the information we're putting out has the globalists scared because it is so accurate and so hardcore.
Now I'ma tell the world, I'ma tell it everywhere I go. Tell the world, yeah, I'm a billboard.